Before laws were carved in stone and kingdoms rose from the earth, survival was fragile, balanced on firelight, hunger, and trust. In those days, every rule of the tribe was absolute, because breaking them risked not only dishonor, but destruction. Women gathered, men hunted. This was the order that had bound generations together. But what happens when desperation shatters that order? In the shadow of a brutal winter, when children whimpered from hunger and the old fell silent with empty bellies, one woman dared to break the law. She was not a warrior, not a chosen hunter. She was a mother. With her child's life fading like smoke in the cold air, she took up a spear and entered the forest alone. Each step she took was defiance, each breath a prayer. And when she returned, blood on her hands and prey across her shoulders, the tribe should have seen salvation. Instead, they saw something else. Her courage fed their bodies, but envy gnawed at their hearts. Whispers rose in the night. No woman could bring back such a kill unless she was touched by spirits. The word witch spread like fire through dry grass. Gratitude twisted into fear, and honor curdled into betrayal. This is the story of the Last Huntress, a tale of hunger, courage, and the terrible price of breaking tradition. The snow never seemed to end. It fell in silence, bearing the valley day after day, until the huts of the Dawn River tribe looked like graves waiting to be sealed. Smoke rose thinly from the few fires still burning, each wisp trailing weakly into a sky as white and unforgiving as bone. This was the hunger moon. The tribe had seen many winters, but none like this. The river was sealed in ice, the deer had vanished into caves, and even the hares, usually desperate enough to scavenge, were nowhere to be found. Children cried into the night with bellies empty, their voices thin as reeds in the wind. The old coughed blood and whispered prayers that no one answered. Inside one of the smaller huts, a woman knelt by her child. The boy's skin clung too tightly to his bones, his breath shallow, his lips cracked. She stroked his forehead, whispering lullabies too faint to soothe even herself. "Eat, my son," she murmured, though there was nothing left to give him. "Sleep, and you will be strong again." But she knew it was a lie. The tribe's food pit, once filled with smoked meat and marrow bones, now held only frost and memory. Men returned from hunts empty-handed, their spears iced over, their shoulders slumped. Women scraped bark from trees and boiled it into bitter soup. But even bark had grown scarce. She had begged the elders. She had knelt before the fire circle, her hair loose in desperation, and pleaded, "My child will not last another moon. Let me hunt. Let me try." The elders' faces, carved from shadow and firelight, had not softened. The oldest among them had shaken his head. "It is not your place," he said, voice firm as stone. "A woman hunts only spirits, never beasts. The forest does not belong to you. If you break this law, you curse us all." The chief's second wife, her eyes sharp with envy, had added her venom. "If every woman took up a spear, what order would bind us? No. Stay by the fire. Gather roots if you must. Leave the hunt to men." But the men returned with nothing, and her child's breath grew weaker. She lay awake that night, staring at the fire's dying glow. Every crackle of the embers felt like a drumbeat against her chest. She remembered her husband, his laugh, his strength, the way he had walked into the forest one autumn and never returned. They had said the wolves took him. She had been forbidden to join the search. Forbidden always. Yet his spear still rested above the hearth, its obsidian tip dull but unbroken. Her eyes lingered on it, and a thought, sharp and dangerous, bloomed in her chest. By dawn, it had become resolve. When the tribe stirred, she walked among them as though nothing had changed. She carried water, split wood, soothed her child with whispers. But when darkness fell and the camp sank into uneasy slumber, she rose. Her hands shook as she reached for the spear. Its weight was heavy, unfamiliar, yet strangely right. Outside, the snow bit into her bare cheeks. The moon hung low, veiled in mist, and the forest loomed like a wall of teeth. Every story she had been told pressed against her mind. Women who disobeyed brought misfortune. Spirits cursed those who trespassed. The forest devoured the impure. She stepped forward anyway. The first sound was her own breath, ragged and loud in the cold air. The second was the crunch of snow beneath her boots. And then came the third, the silence of the forest itself, watching her, judging her, weighing whether she was prey or predator. Branches snapped like bones under her feet. Shadows twisted into strange shapes. She gripped the spear until her knuckles bled white. Hours passed. Her stomach screamed. Her body begged her to turn back. But the image of her child's hollow face drove her forward. At dawn, she found the tracks. A stag, large, proud, heavy enough to feed her son for weeks. Its prints pressed deep into the snow, winding toward a frozen glade. Her heart pounded, not with fear now, but with something else. Something fierce, something that felt like destiny. She lowered the spear and followed. The tracks led her deeper into the forest, where the trees stood close and dark, their branches heavy with snow. The air was sharp enough to cut, and every breath left a cloud that betrayed her presence. She crouched low, her fingers tightening on the spear, her heart beating so loud she feared it would startle the very prey she sought. The elders had always said the forest was not for women, that its shadows would swallow them whole, but she felt something else now. Not fear, not shame, but a wild exhilaration, as though she had crossed a threshold and the forest itself was testing her worth. The first day brought only failure. She tracked the stag to a clearing, but the snow betrayed her, crunching beneath her feet as she moved. The beast lifted its head, eyes flashing in the pale light, and in an instant it was gone, bounding through the trees before she could even raise the spear. She chased, stumbling, her breath burning in her chest, until her legs gave way and she collapsed into the snow. Hunger gnawed at her, but worse was the weight of despair pressing into her bones. She thought of her child, lying weak by the fire, and for the first time she doubted. Could she truly do this? Or was she chasing a dream meant to die in the snow like her husband? Night fell, and she found shelter in a hollow beneath an ancient oak. She lit no fire. She knew the tribe's hunters moved through the woods too, and if they found her here, her punishment would come swifter than the cold. She curled beneath her ragged cloak, trembling as frost crept into her fingers, and whispered her child's name like a prayer to keep her heart beating. Sleep came in fragments, broken by the cries of wolves echoing across the valley. Each howl reminded her of the elders' words. The forest is for men. Women who trespass will be devoured. Yet she clenched the spear tighter, whispering back into the darkness. If the wolves come, let them find me ready. The second day broke with brittle light. Her body ached, her lips cracked with thirst, but the stag's tracks were still fresh. She followed them deeper, across frozen streams and through bramble thickets that tore at her skin. At times, she swore she heard footsteps behind her, but when she turned, there was only silence and snow. Once, she slipped and fell into an icy hollow, her spear clattering away. She clawed back to her feet, gasping, her hands raw and bleeding. But when she held the spear again, she felt something shift inside her. It no longer felt foreign. It felt like hers. By dusk, she found the stag again. It stood at the edge of a frozen glade, steam curling from its nostrils, its antlers wide and sharp as branches. For a long moment she froze, her breath caught in her throat. The creature was more than prey. It was strength itself, survival itself, and striking it down would mean stepping fully into a role no woman had ever dared claim. She thought of her child's face, of his shallow breath, and her fear turned to fire. She lowered her body, steadied her hands, and crept closer. The stag's ears flicked, but it did not move. She raised the spear, her arms trembling, her heart pounding so hard it drowned out the forest. For one eternal breath, she hesitated, then she hurled it with all her strength. The spear struck true. The stag cried out, crashing into the snow, its blood steaming against the ice. She ran to it, falling to her knees beside its body, her hands pressed against its flank. Tears spilled down her face, not of grief, but of something rawer, sharper, triumph. She had done what no woman of her tribe had ever done. She had broken the law. She had saved her child. And in that moment, as the blood spread into the snow like fire, She felt the forest watching her. Not with anger, not with judgment, but with acknowledgement. The woman dragged the stag through the snow with a strength she did not know she had. Every step was agony, every pull a battle against the weight of the kill, but she refused to stop. Her arms ached, her body screamed, but her resolve blazed hotter than the cold. By the time she reached the edge of the valley, the moon had risen, silver light glinting on the blood-stained trail behind her. She knew what waited in the village: suspicion, judgment, perhaps worse, but none of it mattered now. She had won food for her child. She had become what they said she could never be. The village fires burned low when she staggered into camp, the stag's antlers dragging behind her in the snow. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then the gasps began. Children scrambled from their huts, their eyes wide at the sight of prey heavier than 3 men could carry. Mothers clutched their children close, torn between awe and fear. The hunters rose in disbelief, their faces pale. They had returned empty-handed for moons, yet here was a woman, a mother, bearing more meat than they had seen all season. The tribe descended upon the kill. Knives flashed, fires roared, and for the first time in weeks, the scent of roasting flesh filled the air. Hunger silenced pride, at least for a night. She watched her child eat, the boy's sunken cheeks filling with warmth as tears streamed down her face. For that moment, nothing else mattered. She had saved him. But gratitude fades faster than hunger. By the second night, whispers stirred among the huts. No woman had ever brought down such a beast. No woman could wield a spear with such precision. Perhaps she had help from spirits, someone muttered. Another spat into the snow and whispered the word that spreads faster than fire: witch. The men bristled with unease, their pride wounded. If one woman could succeed where they had failed, what did that mean for their place, their power? The elders gathered by the fire once more, their faces lit in uneasy glow. They spoke not of her courage, but of omens, curses, and dangerous powers best left untouched. Her act of love had fed them. Her act of defiance had saved them. Yet, to their eyes, she was no longer a mother. She was a threat. The night of feasting ended, but unease lingered like smoke that refused to fade. The hunters, shamed by her success, stared into the fire with clenched jaws. By morning, the elders summoned her to the great circle. She entered with her child's hand in hers, but the looks she met were not gratitude. They were sharpened like spears. "You defied the law," the oldest elder intoned, his voice slow, heavy. "Women do not hunt. To trespass into the forest with a weapon is to invite curses upon us all." She lifted her chin, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "I broke no law that matters. I fed my son when none of you could. I fed the tribe when you failed." Gasps flickered around the circle. Some mothers bowed their heads, ashamed of the truth in her words, but others looked away, afraid of the storm rising in the elder's eyes. One of the hunters stepped forward, his voice bitter. "No woman could bring down a stag with bare hands and luck alone. You carry powers not of this world. The spirits have touched you." Her grip tightened on her child's hand. "If the spirits touched me, they touched me with mercy. Would you call mercy a curse?" But envy twists faster than logic. The chief's second wife hissed from the shadows, her voice sharp as flint. "She is no savior. She is marked. She walks with demons at her side." The word witch slithered through the crowd again, louder this time. It leapt from mouth to mouth until the fire itself seemed to whisper it. Her child cried out, his small voice breaking through the noise. "She saved me. She is no witch. She is my mother." His tears shone in the firelight, desperate and unheeded. But desperation could not silence fear. The elders raised their hands, their faces carved with cold judgment. "She has broken the balance," the chief declared. "Balance must be restored." The sentence was clear. She would be cast out. Her child, too, if he stayed at her side. Their love had no weight against tradition. She held her son to her chest as the tribe closed in. Hands reached for her, rough and unyielding, stripping the furs from her shoulders. Torches burned, smoke stung her eyes, and she knew she had become the prey. In her heart, sorrow and fury mingled like blood in snow. She had saved them all, and still they chose betrayal. But as they dragged her toward the edge of the camp, her voice rose above the storm. You fear me because I proved you weak. You call me witch because I broke the chains you forged. But remember this, the forest is watching, and the truth will never die." The tribe froze at her words, fear flashing across their faces. The fire snapped loud, as if echoing her curse. The child clung to her, and together they stepped into exile. The snow swallowed her footsteps as she vanished into the forest, her child pressed close against her. Behind her, the tribe's torches flickered, but no one dared follow. They whispered that she would not last a night. The wolves would claim her, the spirits would curse her, and her name would be forgotten in the ice. But moons passed, and still the whispers returned. A hunter claimed he saw her shadow moving among the trees. A woman swore she heard her voice on the wind. Children spoke of a figure leaving food at the edges of the camp. Hares, fish, roots. No one saw her hand, but the gifts were real, as though the forest itself had chosen her. The elders spat and called it trickery. They told the tribe to forget her, to erase her from memory. But fear lingers where silence is forced. Her son grew strong, carried by her will. Some said he became a hunter, greater than any before him, taught by the one who broke the law. Others swore he vanished with her into the wild. Seasons changed, and the story of the woman who hunted spread beyond the valley. To some she was a curse, to others a saint, to many a warning that power could rise from where it was least expected. Around the fire, mothers whispered her name when their children slept, half in prayer, half in defiance. Warriors avoided it, afraid it carried the weight of her spirit. And so she became legend, the Last Huntress, not because she was the first woman to defy, but because her defiance could never be forgotten. Her tribe betrayed her, but her shadow walked on, alive in every woman who dared to grasp a spear, and in every soul who refused to kneel to silence.